All righty. Well, I know a few people are unable to attend and they wanted the recording. So we are going to dive right in. And as people come in, we'll let them enter. I'm just getting everything situated on my screen so I can see everyone. All righty. And let me just. Uh, okay. All right. Got the settings done. Okay, so we are going to talk about how to become an optimist. So welcome to Liz's Optimism Bootcamp. We're going to talk about rewiring your mind for peak performance. I'm so excited about this. Now, really quickly, let me introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Lewis. I'm a mental performance coach. I specialize with executives, entrepreneurs, and professional athletes. I own my own company, Elizabeth Lewis, and I'm the author of The Victor Transformation, and I have almost 2 graduate degrees in psychology. It's a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about what we're going to go over today. First, we're going to get clear on what is optimism. We're going to define optimism. We're going to talk about optimism versus pessimism, go over some benefits of optimism. We're going to talk about why optimism works, how to become an optimist. We're going to learn the framework of a pessimist and an optimist, identify common pessimistic thoughts, and really learn how to recognize your own thought patterns. Then we're going to shift into the daily techniques to cultivate optimism, and then we will have Q&A. And by the way, I will not be recording Q&A in case you are curious about that. All right, let's dive right in. What is an optimist? When you think of an optimist, what comes to mind? Feel free to share in the chats or just to kind of think about it on your own. But when you hear the word optimism, you may think of 2 definitions, like a positive outlook or the glass half full. And the APA, the Association of the American Psychological Association, defines optimism as hopefulness, the attitude that good things will happen and that people's wishes or aims will ultimately be fulfilled. Do you notice the confidence and conviction in that definition? It's an attitude of good things will happen. I think a lot of us walk around with an attitude that bad things are going to happen. I don't know about you, but I don't want to walk around like bad things are going to happen, especially if this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the definition continues by saying anticipating positive outcomes, whether serendipitously or through perseverance and effort, and who are confident of attaining desired goals. Think about this for a second. Are you anticipating positive or worst case scenario? I don't know about you, but I want to anticipate best case scenario. So let's talk about anticipation for just 1 second here. Anticipate is a verb. It's expecting something to happen. And in this case, you're expecting good things to happen. Are you expecting good things to happen? I know more people that I think are expecting bad things to happen. Now, let me ask you this, 2 questions for you, and you can share in the comments if you feel, or in the chat if you feel comfortable. But where would you be in your life if you anticipated positive outcomes? Let's elaborate. What emotions would you have if you believed good things always happen to you? Now, in performance or sports psychology, we say optimism is believing with hard work you could be the best. Do you believe you could be the best? I once watched an interview with Kobe Bryant, and he was reflecting on his journey of becoming a professional basketball player. And he said something that really encompasses this optimistic identity that we're talking about here. And it's this. He said, I don't know if I could be the best basketball player, but I'm going to try. And that's what we're talking about. He was willing to put in the work to try to become the best. Now, I want to be clear here. Optimism is not a naive assumption that everything's always going to be fine. It's also not being a Pollyanna who views the world through rose-colored glasses and never has a worry about life. It's also not passive or avoidant, meaning optimism is not believing great things will happen to your company or life while you sit on the sidelines. Now, in my research in optimism, there was a consistent theme of being realistic with optimism. I personally think when you're realistic, you're honestly more pessimistic, but to each their own. I don't agree with this realistic optimistic connection here. And I'll explain. I think it's better to be illogical with optimism, trust God, have faith, and believe in yourself and the dream. Where I think people begin to develop this toxic positivity and optimism is when they fail to implement pragmatic action. Can't sit on the sidelines and do nothing and expect greatness to happen. But think about all the things that seemed illogical at the time before it was manifested, yet one person believed it was possible, and because of their belief, it is. For instance, let's take Thomas Edison. I don't know how many times he attempted to make the light bulb or what this quote is connected to in his inventions. When I did the research, there was lots of contradicting numbers, and I just want to be honest about that. But Thomas Edison attempted 10,000 times before being successful. The entire time he was optimistic it would work, and we say that because of how many times did he try? And I think a lot of us would start to quickly become pessimistic after the 5th try, especially after the 15th try. And I don't think most of us would get to the 50th try. And I think very, very few of us would get to the 999 try, let alone the 9,999 try. Everyone said he was probably illogical and crazy while he was doing this. My point is don't let someone tell you what you believe is illogical. Don't let someone tell you what you believe is illogical, because it may be exactly what God's asking you to do. So we see in the Bible also, by the way, that God is illogical. And as we are going to see here in a second, optimism strongly connects with the concept of faith. But to go back to sports psychology, optimism is believing with hard work you could be the best. You could reach your goals. You could do the impossible. That is the type of mentality I want. I don't know about you. Now, the truth is, optimism is often an act of faith, a belief in something that cannot be proven. It requires faith. In my 8 years of research on positive psychology and mindset and success, I've discovered faith to be a huge theme of success. You have to walk by that vision of success you have in your mind's eye, acting as if you already have it, like living as if it's already happened. It's called the law of as if. And many of us are walking around acting like we don't have it, and that's what you're getting, right? Works both ways. You walk by faith of that vision and not by what you physically see. Remember, faith is not for the weak of heart. It's about bringing the future to the present and the present to the future, but by believing as if the vision has already happened. Now, there's a verse in the Bible that discusses this principle that we're talking about here. It's in 2 Corinthians 5:7, and Apostle Paul tells us to walk by faith, not by sight. And it's the same with everything else, including being optimistic. Maybe you're not optimistic today, but do you see the future as optimistic? If so, then you operate from that identity now. Now, if you have questions about this, I'm happy to explain it in more detail at the end of this, because I know it can be a mind shift concept. But you have to have faith and belief in yourself and even a higher power, if that's for you, and that vision. And then you believe that that vision will come to fruition, which causes you to walk by that vision, not what you're seeing right now. I know it's backwards than what the world says. Now, the dictionary defines faith as complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Optimists have complete trust and confidence that good, positive things are always happening to them all the time. Just imagine where you would be if that was your default way of thinking. Now, to connect it to your vision, I'm saying you will walk by confidence that your vision will happen at the right time. But in the meantime, you're going to act like it's already happened. Now, it's fair to say optimism also requires you to trust yourself and be confident. The irony is when we are optimistic, we trust ourselves more. And that allows us to use more of our subconscious brain to do its thing, right? To really flourish and thrive. So you have to put that faith into action by learning and honing your skills. Now, regardless of what happens to an optimistic person, they find something to be hopeful about. They find a reason to keep believing, whether that's through themselves or a higher power. They keep believing and do not give up. They keep working hard. And ultimately, what we're talking about here is learning how to develop a positive identity that enables you to have an optimistic perspective, right? Point of view, an optimistic mindset, how you think, optimistic self-talk, optimistic core beliefs, and optimistic. Oops, someone just popped in. The optimistic mindset or attitude is characterized by maintaining positive expectations for important future outcomes. So it comes down to the stories you tell yourself, also known as your explanatory or narration style. So really that internal dialogue and how you interpret the circumstances and events of your life. You got to remember there's always more than one way to interpret things. And that's what we're going to really be going over today. But first, let's just get really clear on what a pessimist is before we go any further. Alrighty, so what is a pessimist? Feel free to share in the chat. Feel free to just kind of let us know. Now, let's be honest. If an optimist is a person who tends to be hopeful and confident about the future or the success of something, then a pessimist is a person who tends to see the worst aspects of things or believe that the worst will happen. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. At the end of the day, there's only two real ways of looking at life. Optimistically, which is seeing bad events in their least threatening life, or imagine the worst. I bet you could guess which one's going to lead to depression or feeling lethargic or health suffers or health issues. Whereas the other ones, oh, you're going to be more resilient, you're going to be better energized, you're going to have better health. Now let's quickly compare a pessimistic person to an optimistic person, because I've learned that this can be a game changer for my clients. So a pessimist tend to generalize and personalize negative events. They think bad things always happen to them and that it's because something is wrong with them. Now, when something good is happening, they typically minimize it, assuming it's just a stroke of luck, it's temporary, it's a fluke, it's due to some random external factor. And what we found in research is pessimists have a fixed mindset, meaning they believe a person's attitude and abilities are set at birth and can't be changed. Notice that strong core belief of helplessness in that. You are destined to however you were born. They don't think there's a way to improve their lives. Nature, fate, or the divine has put them into a certain situation and there's nothing they can do about it, right? They are helpless. They must submit. And they don't believe there's anything in their control to fix this situation, which creates a core belief of helplessness. And they have a negative explanatory style. Now, if we compare this with an optimist tend to generalize and personalize positive events. See the difference just right from there? So when something good happens, they think it's because of their own abilities or simply because good things happen to them. Because remember, they are walking around anticipating good things to happen. They have a belief that good things will always occur to them, as we read in the definition earlier. When something bad happens to an optimist, they see it as a temporary setback due to external causes. They don't blame themselves, unlike the pessimist. So they'll say something like, oh, well, it didn't work out this time, but I'm confident it will next time. And they have mastered or are working to master a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is where you put in your effort more than your abilities, and you believe that you can change through effort. So growth mindsets believe that they can change, that they can improve their skills and attitudes in order to make a positive change in the world around them. And the growth mindset will see problems as temporary setbacks or a challenge that they can overcome. And because they believe that there's control, that they have an element of control in the situation that they're in, they have what's called as personal control. And so they have a belief that there's always something they can do about it. Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning. I am messing everything up today. A Man's Search for Meaning really indicates this, right? You know, he was in a Nazi camp, unfortunately, but he was like, they can't control my beliefs. And he really took control where he had control. And their self-talk is an explanatory style. It's optimistic. It's very encouraging, very powerful. Now, the defining characteristics of a pessimist are this. They tend to believe that bad events will last a long time. I mean, they are going to be dramatic. And they're going to undermine everything that they do. And this means more self-conflict, more self-hatred, more self-rejection. When you are in disagreement with yourself, you are in trouble because you can't move forward, because you are spending all of your time arguing with yourself, not trusting yourself, challenging yourself. And you're like your worst enemy. Where as an optimist, they tend to believe defeat is just a temporary setback. This too shall pass. One of my favorite mantras, been using it since middle school. I encourage you to use it too. And they believe that causes are confined to one case, right? It doesn't go outside this one situation. They also believe defeat is not their fault. They see it as circumstances, bad luck, part of life, or other people brought it on. Optimists are unfazed by defeat, and when confronted by a bad situation, an optimist perceives it as a challenge and increases their effort, whereas pessimists, oh, they just give up. They just give up. Now, with that said, let's look at a more detailed comparison of how an optimist and a pessimist might think and what that thinking really leads to. So pessimistic thinking is going to cause you to give up easy. You are going to give up so much quicker than an optimist is. You'll get more depressed. You'll have self-fulfilling prophecies. You got to remember that fear does become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have proven this. Martin Seligman has a lot of research on that. Pessimistic thinking drives helplessness. It increases passivity. It causes you to lose the battle before it even begins. It can lead somebody to blame themselves when they're actually completely innocent. This pessimistic habit of thinking can transform a mere setback into a disaster. Maybe you know someone who does it, and they play it safe game or a not to lose game, right? And if you play that, then you've actually already lost, because if you're focusing on not losing, then you're not focusing on winning. Whereas an optimist, they do much better in school, college, and work. They are better at playing sports. They exceed predictions on aptitude tests. And in fact, they're actually more likely to be elected in office, which I found was a fun little thing there. They have much better health. They age well. They don't struggle with the typical ills of middle age. And evidence even suggests that they live longer because they catch less diseases. They have better health habits, and they have a better immune system. But why does optimism help us with performance? Can you guess? Well, I'll tell you that the short answer is because when we are optimistic, we trust ourselves. And when you trust yourself, it's easy to be more effective because you're more in the present moment. You're looking for opportunities where you can increase your effort versus being so introspective where you're like kind of, I don't know, in this ping pong game match with yourself about can I not, right? You're just so double-minded about everything and in so much conflict within yourself. So think about it. The opposite of optimism is pessimism, right? And that's where you're turned towards fear, doubt, concern, hatred, rejection, and so forth, right? So that's going to keep you so introspective versus moving forward if you just trusted yourself, right? Think about the things that you trust yourself, that you know you do well. You're not sitting there going, oh, I don't know, can I do it? Can I not do it? Well, you're not allowing fear, right? Like I feel very comfortable driving. When I get in the car to drive, I don't have this conversation that's pessimistic. But sometimes when I'm outside of my comfort zone, I'll notice that pessimism might pop up a little bit more because I don't fully trust myself yet in that outside of that comfort zone. And that's why you got to keep getting out of your comfort zone. Now, also in performance, life goes best when you trust your skills, right? And when you allow your performance to just flow or you to be you, it's just easier to enter the state of flow. So consider this. While the correlation between optimism and success is imperfect, although research does consistently show that a healthy dose of optimism does increase your odds of success, there is an almost perfect correlation between negative thinking and failure. Now, Martin Seligman's research on optimism over the years has supported this, and he's discovered that optimists are more successful than pessimists because they do not give up. They keep working at it. They are able to stay consistent and maintain long-term thinking, which is very connected to success, a lot longer than a pessimist. They are 4 times more likely to win an award. They trust people much quicker and easier, which means they are easier to trust as well. Now, in my 8 years of studying optimism, I believe the biggest reason to why they are successful is because they see a bad situation as a challenge. It's an opportunity to increase their effort, to grow. They also don't really see that failure exists too, is one thing I've learned. And that excites them, or at least they're willing, right? But let's quickly shift to the benefits of optimism. I want to keep our time to what we agreed on. So we're going to quickly go through the benefits of mental health. Optimists are more prone to trying to solve a problem faster. They're not going to give up as quickly as a pessimist. And they present a higher quality of life compared to those with low levels of optimism or pessimism. They adapt way better to stressful situations. They have positive repercussions on their quality of life, and they manage difficulties better because they are more optimistic about their future. They project so much hope into their future. It's unbelievable. There's nothing but good things coming. The best days are ahead of them. And they identify new aims in life faster. They've got greater flexibility, better problem-solving skills. Their optimism is also the most powerful predictor of resilience, and we all need more resilience. Optimism and the anticipation that comes with it makes us happy. Positive emotions can undo the effects of negative emotions. They say in neuropsychology, for every 1 negative thought, you need to find 3 to 5 positives. And they're more likely to let go and enter acceptance. So here are some of the physical health benefits, because there's so much evidence that suggests optimism really serves as a powerful tool for preventing disease and promoting healthy aging. So you have a strengthened immune system, you have lower risk of infection, improved disease recovery, longer lifespan, improved heart health, right? You get reduced blood pressure, you have better blood circulation, lower risk of heart disease, you have improved metabolism, more likely to exercise, less likely to smoke. And optimists tend to live an average of 11 to 15% longer than pessimists and have an excellent chance of achieving exceptional longevity. Isn't that exciting? So all of this is great, right? You're like, cool, thanks for telling me all this information. But the question still remains, how do I become an optimist? Well, I'm glad you asked. And I want to emphasize, becoming an optimist comes down to it's your choice, and it's your choice alone. And it's something you're going to have to work at. It's something you're going to have to practice. A lot of times people become optimistic, or they think that they can become optimistic and they don't have to maintain it or work at it, but you do. Because all things might start out good, but then they slowly go down to bad unless you put that effort and energy into it. So you can look at life with a pessimistic or optimistic lens. You can become a philosopher of the worst kind, inventing ways to rationalize your failures, inventing excuses for your mediocrity, and ultimately believe that you have no special talents, abilities, and are ultimately helpless. Or just saying, you can fall in love with your skills. You can fall in love with your effort. You can fall in love with yourself, your talents, and your gifts, and then intentionally work to maximize those strengths and take control where you actually have control. Now, believe it or not, Martin Seligman discovered the framework that pessimists think in, and that's what we're going to focus on next. It's called the 3 Ps. So first we have permanence. So pessimists see setbacks as permanent events. They see them as helpless, right? They feel so absolutely helpless. They feel like nothing is in their control and that they just need to lay down and just take the abuse, that there's nothing that they can do to get out of it. Whereas optimists see a negative event as temporary. They see that, okay, this is going to pass, it's not going to last forever, and they take control where they have control. Now, a pessimist is going to really see the pervasiveness, right? So pessimists see negative events as impacting their entire life. This bad day at work has just ruined the whole week, right? They really allow it to permeate throughout their entire existence. Whereas optimists really isolate this situation, right? They see it as, again, temporary, and they know it's going to pass. And then we see personalization. So pessimists attribute negative events to personal failings. They really are blaming themselves. You want to talk about being hard on yourself. A pessimist is going to be so hard on themselves to an unrealistic level, right? They're going to be so just hopeless and helpless, and a victim's mentality is very quick to blossom from this environment, if you will. But an optimist attributes failure to external factors that can be changed. So let's look at an example. So a pessimist is going to say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to reach my goals, especially if they've had some feedback where they're not moving to the degree they want to. But this is what an optimist would say: through effort, learning, consistent action, and persistence, I will get there. Now, a pessimist is going to say, I am such a loser for making that error. And then that error and what they did is going to infiltrate their entire day, their entire week, every fiber of their being. They're going to carry this like whoops moment all throughout the day. Whereas a optimist says, I didn't get the results I wanted, but I did my best, and I'll learn from that mistake. Now, a pessimist is going to say, oh, that event failed and I'm bad at organizing. Whereas an optimist is going to be way more honest with themselves and say, you know what, the weather wasn't great, so the event didn't have a good turnout. So notice the optimism or pessimism is coming from our thought patterns, and it's being amplified by our internal narration or self-talk. So how you explain situations to yourself is the key in being optimistic, right? It's going to come down to how you perceive it, how you think about it, and how you explain it to yourself. And we want to make sure we do it in the optimistic framework, which is a lot simpler. Number one, it's temporary. Everything is temporary. Every situation will pass. Again, my favorite mantra, this too shall pass, is a beautiful one to use in those difficult seasons. Number two, it's an isolated incident. So they keep the situation confined to that situation. They don't bring it to the next situation or to the next moment of their life. And number three, it's external factors. They're not going to blame themselves. Now, optimists usually see the good things in life as something they can control. That's where they take ownership. Whereas pessimists do the opposite. They see bad things in life as something that just happens to them because they're helpless and there's no control in it, right? Now, optimists, again, they see that good things are happening. It's something that they can control and it lasts a long time and it affects so many areas of their life. And when bad things happen, because bad things do happen regardless, they don't just think it's bad luck, but they also know it's going to go away soon and it's part of life and it doesn't have to impact them more than they allow it to, if that makes sense. So let's kind of shift really quickly to optimist and thought patterns and really get clear on that because the science of optimism, particularly as it relates to our minds and our self-talk, is a fascinating area of study, especially in psychology and neuroscience. So here's an overview, and we're going to keep this very simple and to the point. So optimism is rooted in how we process information and make attributions about events. And when we talk about optimism and self-talk, understand that positive self-talk is a key component. Internal dialogue shapes our perceptions and responses to events. So optimistic self-talk can lead to better stress management and problem-solving approaches. Who wouldn't want more than that? So speaking of all this self-talk, what is your self-talk telling you? In the last hour, in the last 15 minutes, in the last, I don't know, 5 days, have you had more negative self-talk or positive self-talk, or do you not know? No harm, no foul, no room for condemnation here. All we want to do is grow awareness because if we don't have awareness, we can't do much about it. And remember, optimism is an attitude that you can choose to have. It's a choice. Whatever happens to an optimist, they find a reason to be hopeful. And that means they are unconsciously and consciously finding ways to become and stay optimistic. So let's review some self-talk here. Pay attention. Which one are you focusing? Which one is resonating more with you? Which one sounds most familiar? So negative self-talk is going to sound like this. I can't do anything right. I'm not good enough. I suck. I always mess things up. Ugh. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm blank, right? I don't know if I'm smart enough, good enough, thin enough, pretty enough, whatever enough. I'm a failure. People don't like me. I'm too old for this. Whereas positive self-talk is I can learn from my mistakes and improve. I'm enough just as I am. I'm capable of solving problems. I can do this. I will give it my best attempt and I will keep learning. And I'm worthy of friends and love. Age is just a number and I can achieve my goals. I want to zoom out really quickly. I just had this idea. Do you notice how negative and how stuck and how helpless and how like fixed this negative self-talk is? Versus the positive of anticipating good things. The best days are yet to come. I am going to take control where I have control. I'm going to willingly put in the hard work. Do you see the difference from a high view? So which one do you have a tendency to do? I'm curious. And here's the thing, if you said, oh, wow, I'm really on the negative side of the self-talk, then understand that you have more negative core beliefs than positive ones. And again, we're not going to condemn ourselves. That's just going to increase our pessimistic thinking. What we're going to do is say, hey, here's an opportunity for me to change it and really start to develop positive core beliefs, positive programming. And that means you're just going to start to challenge your thoughts. You're going to start to challenge your core beliefs. You're going to start to challenge your core programming because now you know a better way. Now, the most common thinking traps is what CBT calls cognitive distortions, which is slang for thinking traps or stinking thinking or crappy thinking or whatever you have, right? So we have all or nothing thinking, and this is where you see things as black or white, right or wrong. There's very little gray. There's nothing in between. It's right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, right? Those are the only two like flavors you see. And then there's overgeneralization. And this is where you focus on one incident to describe a situation or a person. But you would use words like always, never with a single event or experience, right? Like maybe you just met Barbara. Barbara's always negative. You've met her once. You can't say that. Magnifying or minimizing. This is seeing things as dramatically more or less important than they are, and it often creates a catastrophe that follows. And speaking of catastrophe, then we have catastrophizing. And this is very much an anxiety producing way of thinking, meaning you're going to overestimate the consequences of things and really project what you don't want to see into the future. Then you have should statements. These are rigid rules for how your inner and external world needs to operate, meaning you are going to leave very little room for kind of like very little wiggle room is what I'm trying to say here. And you'll find your verbiage being should, need to, ought to, must. And you're going to feel like you have an obligation to follow these rigid rules, and you might not even want to follow them. So there might be some guilt and some just frustration that comes up. Then you have labeling, mislabeling. And this is where you attach a negative label to yourself or others following, again, a single event. Jumping to conclusions. This is making assumptions about yourself or others without evidence. Discounting the positives. This is where you do 99 things right, but that one thing you didn't do right, and that bothers you. So you're going to not acknowledge the 99 things you did well, and you're just going to hyper focus on that one thing you did wrong. Blame is where you blame yourself when you weren't entirely responsible, or you blame others denying your part in the situation. Then we have personalization. This is where you overestimate your influence on the event, or you take things personal, making it all about you and it has very little to do about you. Emotional reasoning is I feel, therefore I am. You are way too trusting of your feelings. Mental filters, where you allow one negative detail or fact to spoil your enjoyment, happiness, hope, fun, or the good time, right? Like maybe your dinner was cooked poorly and that you allow that to ruin the evening. Thoughts are facts. This is where you believe thoughts are what they say they are. You are way too trusting of your thoughts, and you might even perceive your thoughts as being you. You are not your thoughts. Remember that. It's not fair is where you hyper focus on whether things are fair or not. I think we can all agree life's not fair. If only is where you hyper focus on imagined outcomes as the solution to your problems and believe an external reality will solve your problems. For instance, if I had $1 billion, I'd be happy. Yet research says that doesn't actually increase your happiness. Tunnel vision is where you fixate on another person's behavior that fits your assumptions or judgments about the individual. And biased explanation is believing another person has negative motives about you. Now, I know I just went through all of those fast, and you might be like, oh my gosh, Liz, that's cool. But how do I identify my own? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you want to learn your thinking traps, then I'm really going to encourage you to take this 5-minute quiz. It will produce your results and it will tell you what thinking traps you most struggle with. It's going to score you in 17 of the most common ones. The higher your score is, the more prone you are to doing this type of thinking. And then it will give you a 25-page PDF explaining what that thinking trap is and providing you examples. Knowing your thinking traps are so important. This is one way you can really get ahead of your negative thinking and understand what your negative triggers are or what could trigger you to fall into that mentality. Now, let's go to how do you recognize your crappy thinking, right? I've just given you one tool, but I want to give you some more tools. Now, what if I told you 95% of your thoughts are the same every single day? Isn't that like sad when you stop and you think about it? When I kept running into this statistic in research, it was just like, oh, for us. Now, for the average person, 80% of their thoughts are going to be negative. So that means it's actually quite good news. Here's the optimistic perspective here. Every day you get an opportunity to start paying attention to what you're thinking about. You get to start to grow your mental awareness. You get to start to improve your present moment focus or mindfulness. This is good news because you have an opportunity to get ahead of it and continue practicing it. Now, I see thoughts coming from either the kingdom of faith or the kingdom of fear. I also see our emotions either coming from the kingdom of love or the kingdom of fear. So faith-filled thoughts are going to be substances or thoughts that you hope for, that you want to see. Again, going back to that optimist definition, it's positive. It's anticipating good things are coming, and it really represents your future, even your present. Whereas fearful thoughts are going to be what you don't want to have happened. And it's going to be negative, and it's easier to do than the positive, by the way. And it really represents destruction of your future. So let's talk about 5 steps to help you recognize your stinking thinking or your pessimistic thoughts. You want to identify the trigger. And depending on where you are with your mindfulness, with your present moment capabilities, with your self-awareness, we're all in different areas. This might be something you have to do through reflection before you can do it in the moment. You want to practice reflecting as much as possible so that you can start to catch it in the moment, but understand you're going to have to reflect really before you can catch it in the moment. So identify the trigger. Notice what event or situation caused that negative thinking to start or that negative reaction. Were you all of a sudden in a good mood and then you went and hung out with Barbara and Barbara's a negative Nancy and then all of a sudden you became negative? Then that might be a moment for you to realize like maybe you need to take some space from Barbara, get stronger with your optimism, and when you can protect and guard your heart, then go back. And understanding the context helps you pinpoint the source of pessimism too. And this is, again, something that is like a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it's going to get and the stronger it's going to get. You want to start to catch the thought. This can take time. We have anywhere from 6,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Depending on your temperament, you're going to be different on your thinking capabilities. So you really want to pay attention to the thoughts that arise after the trigger. The best thing you can do is write them down to make them more tangible and easier to analyze. Again, if you're going to do this through reflection, just go back down memory lane to the best of your abilities, just to the best of your abilities. We're not trying to get perfect. And consider writing down the things that you had, the things that popped in your mind's eye. And then really start to evaluate them. Now, to improve your mental awareness, I really encourage having mindful moments throughout your day. And this is where you intentionally check in with yourself, set an alarm to check in with yourself, and you ask yourself these 3 questions. What am I doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And you just mentally observe. You also want to label the distortion. Now, if you're not clear or if you're not proficient yet at being able to identify these distortions, which it takes time to develop, then I want you to label the emotion. Neuropsychology has discovered the more granular you get at labeling the emotions inside of you, the easier it is to kind of detach from those feelings and really start to practice acceptance, where you can really open yourself to the sensations going through you without that judgment or trying to control it. And that's what we're looking for. So again, familiarize yourself with the common cognitive distortions. I really encourage you taking that thinking trap quiz because it will really help you. Identify the ones that are most prone to you, check in to see if you're participating in a thinking trap. And then what you want to do is challenge the thought. Remember, you are not your thoughts. So ask yourself if this thought is based on facts or assumptions. You want to look for evidence that supports, is this truth or is this a lie? You also want to consider alternative perspectives, right? Really use innovative thinking, stretch your imagination, stretch your mind, find different ways of perceiving it. And then lastly, you want to reframe the thought, replace the distorted thought with a more balanced or positive one. Remember, if you have a crappy thought, choose a different one. It's that simple and that hard. But once you get the hang of it, it does really become quite simple, but it's up to you and how much you practice it. So these 5 steps really can help you break the cycle of pessimism and start to develop a more optimistic mindset. Now let's talk about how to cultivate optimism every single day. And as we wrap up, I'll share these 4 techniques that you can use to cultivate optimism in your life. First, we want to practice optimistic mindfulness. This is kind of where we put an intentionality into mindfulness. So due to our natural negativity bias, we tend to focus on bad things that happen or what we don't like. And again, for every 1 negative thought, it's 3 to 5 positive thoughts that you want to intentionally think about. So simply being aware when we start dwelling on unpleasant experiences does help us step back and avoid being overwhelmed by negativity. So we want to practice this. So I also then say, let's focus on finding positivity throughout the day with intentionality. Let's break down mindfulness first. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose with curiosity and being open-minded. That means no judgment. We are just observing. We're taking things on. We have no opinion. We are a fly on our mental wall. That's all we are doing. And you can actually practice this obviously with your thoughts, but with yourself and even with others. Like go to Starbucks, sit down, grab some coffee, and just politely observe what you're seeing, right? You're not making judgments. You're just observing. And then for this situation, you're going to start to observe life and find the positives. So neuropsychologist Rick Hansen advises that to counter our negativity biases, we should deliberately focus on positive experiences. So when something good happens, you want to keep it in your awareness for 20 to 30 seconds, letting it sink deeply into your mind. Now, what I encourage you to do is as many times throughout your day, I want you to intentionally pause in these mindful moments. You're going to ask, what am I doing? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? But what's a positive thing in my space that I could acknowledge? There's so many positive things. And sometimes it takes innovative thinking. That's okay. That's just going to help you grow even more. So find one thing, let it sink in for that 20 or 30 seconds, or share it with a friend or accountability partner. And now you can bless another person with that positive thing. Visualize the best case scenario. If you're going to go to worst case, it's only fair to go to best case. So envisioning a positive future has been shown to boost optimism. Visualization is so powerful. At some point this year, we'll do a visualization webinar, masterclass. Visualization, oof, man, it's powerful. People do not realize how powerful it is. For this, what we want to do is spend 10 minutes picturing the best possible future for yourself, and you want to imagine it in vivid detail. Now, when it comes to visualization, we all are on different stages on how competent we are at visualizing. And what I mean by that is some people, it's very easy for them to visualize stuff and they see it in really vivid details. Other people, it's like foggy, and some people have no visualization whatsoever, especially if they've never seen it done. So you want to figure out where you are based off of how easy is it for you to see the image? How clear is it? Does it feel like you're right there, or does it feel like you're far away? Now, if you're really clear with it and you feel like you're in it, then you want to leverage your emotions and all of your senses. What's it going to smell like? What's it going to look like? What's it going to sound like? What's it going to taste? And how's it going to feel? You've got to leverage those senses, because even if you're not aware of it, like right now I'm in my office, it smells clean to me, and it feels comfortable. Right now I'm thirsty, so it tastes like I need water. And right now it's quiet, minus me talking. And so if you can kind of start to pay attention to your senses in your current environment, it can sometimes be easier to then translate it into the visualization, if that makes sense. But here's the thing, you're going to focus on it. You're going to speak it out loud. You're going to write it down. You're going to read it as many times. You're going to practice visualizing it. But most importantly, you're not going to contradict it. You're not going to contradict it. You're going to hold on to it. You also want to practice a gratitude list. I think we're all familiar with the gratitude list. In my experience, very few people do it, but gratitude lists can significantly enhance your optimism. So start by making a list of the people and things in your life that you're grateful for, like your home, your job, your pets, your kids, your spouse. And you can even include good moments from the day, like maybe a kind cashier interacted with you, or maybe you found that lost thing. But also don't forget about the sensory experiences, like the aroma of morning coffee, or like I love lemon water. Like lemon water is something to be grateful for me, or the warmth of the bed, right? Or when you snuggle with your puppy or your spouse. So you want to create this list, get emotionally invested. We're not going to just go through the motions, because that's not effective. Gratitude lists are impactful when you are emotionally involved with what you are doing. And you also want to make sure you don't repeat. But maintaining a gratitude journal really does help train the brain to focus on positives, to deepen your appreciation of good things in your life, to increase your life contentment, and to strengthen your sense of optimism. The last thing that we want to do is get moving. Research shows that regular exercise, it doesn't only just benefit our health, but it does play a crucial role in fostering optimism. A study published in the Journal of Health Psychology found that individuals who engage in regular physical activity report higher levels of positive emotions and optimism compared to those who are less active. Exercise triggers the release of endorphins, often referred to as the feel-good hormones, or if you ever watch Legally Blonde, happy people don't kill their husband. I always love that line for some reason, which enhances mood and promotes a more positive outlook. Additionally, exercise can improve self-esteem and provide a sense of accomplishment, further reinforcing an optimistic mindset. So incorporating regular physical activity into your routine can be a huge, powerful tool to really cultivating that optimistic perspective and mindset for your life. Now, maybe you're like, well, how much do I exercise? Well, research suggests that even moderate amounts of exercise can significantly boost your optimism, according to the American Psychological Association. As little as 30 minutes of moderate exercise, such as brisk walking 5 times a week, can lead to noticeable improvements in mood and optimism. Now, more intense or prolonged exercise, such as 60 minutes of vigorous activity 3 times a week, can yield even greater benefits. But the key is consistency. So regular physical activity, even in a small dose, can help sustain a more positive and optimistic outlook over time. If you don't like to exercise, then start small, 10 minutes a day. Build on it, right? We want to get quick wins at the end of the day. And the days where you feel like you don't want to do it are the days you do definitely need to do it. So there's some self-discipline that we're going to increase in this. Okay, let's recap everything that we have learned because I've thrown a lot at you in this 45 minutes. So, optimism is a choice, and optimists believe that through hard work, they can be the best. It's an attitude that good things will happen, it's anticipating positive outcomes. And optimism is rooted in how we process information and make attributions about events, and positive self talk is a key component. Okay, let's connect really quickly. If you want to learn more about becoming an optimist, I really encourage you to schedule a complimentary session with me or schedule a session to learn more about the Optimism Mastermind. We do know through research, even though I didn't share it today, that if you can hang around positive people, that's really good for helping you develop optimism and positivity. So I'm putting together an optimist mindset mastermind where we just come together and we can increase our optimism. We can learn more techniques and tools with optimism, but also just be around supportive people. So I'm really excited to present that. It's going to be a very affordable mastermind too, because we are just trying to get positivity out. We don't need a world of negativity. I think that's doing a great job already. Okay, I'm going to stop recording and I will answer anybody's questions if they have it. Let me just turn off the recording.